Okay, call the January 9th, 2023 meeting of the Southborough Personnel Board to order. Happy New Year, everyone. Welcome. First order of business, we have two sets of minutes, November 30th, 2022 and December 16th, 2022. Any comments, corrections, changes to the minutes?
No.
Is there a motion to approve both sets of minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So do roll call.
They're all in person.
Yeah, okay.
Aye.
I've got five, it's a chair's report, just briefly, the period for people to apply for tuition reimbursement has come and gone, and we have no applicants for this fiscal year. So we likely will be returning $5,000 to the town.
Can Barry, given you got no response, can we do another period?
We've struggled with this over time because any deadline we set is pretty arbitrary, given the way colleges operate these days. So after a lot of discussion, we sort of settled, and Dorian's been on the end of the year. We've had people come after that date. That could happen last year. Someone applied after that date and we said, no, we wouldn't do it. So, I mean, whatever people want to do, but I think we've advertised it. I think people know if someone's interested. I think they would have come forward, and well, I suppose it could be someone now who decides and still wants to take a course before the end of the fiscal year, but there'll be another 5,000 available July 1.
So basically, the way our process is working, someone that takes a course in the spring semester pretty much is not getting.
They would generally know before the end of the year that they're taking a course in the spring.
Okay, so basically, we're not aware of anyone that is taking a course this spring. So the earliest possible next reimbursement date would be someone taking a course next summer. Okay.
Mark's already spent the extra $5,000.
Yeah, taking a course on meditation.
Sign me up.
There's not enough money. He needs extra.
Okay, moving on to new business, old business, rather. I'm gonna put item number 1 till later and get to the reclassifications. But before we actually get to those, I just wanted to say a few things. Because it dawned on me that we have not done a lot of classifications recently. I mean, some people on the panel have either not been through any classification or have been through one. Just wanted to talk about what our process has been for doing classifications. So typically, if we get a classification, come up a new job is proposed between these studies, we would get 3 pieces of information. We would get a job description, we would get the comparable community pay data, and the third item we would get could come to us in one of 2 ways. The prior consultant gave the town a scoring tool to evaluate job descriptions. Now, this is a proprietary scoring tool, not to be made public. So the way it was done was 2 members of the board scored the job, generally along with Vanessa, and if there was a consensus about what job grade the position should be, they then came back and recommended that to the full board. The other members of the board only got the recommendation. They do not see any of the backup data because, again, the documents used in that process were proprietary. When we've done reclassification studies, it's the same thing, except that the consultant just gives us recommendations, and we typically do not see the scoring for those. In fact, I've never seen scoring that a consultant has done, or is the score sheets that a consultant. So those are the 3 pieces of information that we historically have used to make these decisions. So I just say that as sort of background as we move forward through this process, because I know people have had some concerns. Anyway, with that, one other thing. So these job descriptions we're going to be voting on today, with the exception of the local inspector and, well, we're not doing that. So the job descriptions we're going to be voting on today have not yet been approved by their appointing authorities, which they typically would be before they come before this board. And that's just a matter of timing. People have been rushing to get these done, despite the fact they've had several months to do it. Be that as it may. So what I'd like to do is make a motion that will cover all of the job descriptions that we do, that say it, to the extent we approve them, that we're approving them subject to the appointing authority approval. So that they know they have to go back, and if the appointing authority makes any changes, they have to come back to us.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. All in favor? Any questions about it? Sure. Okay. Nothing. Thank you for that. All right, the first one, A2, Deputy Treasurer Collector, the Collins Center has recommended that we reclassify this from a job grade 4 to a job grade 6. There's also a memo in the packet from Brian Valentine supporting that and giving additional reasons why that should be done. Find it. Is it 50? I'm sorry, page 50 in your packet. Thank you. And I open at this point just for any questions about the job description.
My only question is, I think in reading the minutes, you already approved. You already approved the job description last time, but we did not get to the
But
reclassification.
this description is different from the one we approved. This has been supplemented
Okay,
from the one we approved.
all right, so it's to approve the changes to the one we already
Yeah,
approved.
it was the one that we have in front of us today.
Got it, okay.
Any questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the job
I actually
description?
have one
Okay.
question. So we're looking at pay rate now. Are we,
Well, at this point, we're just looking at job description.
oh, okay. Well, in this, it's.
Yeah, we'll get to that. But for now, we're just voting on approval of the job
Okay,
description.
sorry. Got it.
Okay. Any questions? Is there a motion? I'll move to approve the description of the job description of the deputy treasurer collector position that's in the packet.
Second,
All in favor? 5-0. Thank you. All right, and again, the Collins Center has recommended that this be reclassified as a job grade 6. You have, again, Brian's support of that recommendation. Is there discussion?
I actually have a question. Are we going to be moving that position to a grade 6 before we do the 4%? Or are we doing the 4% and then moving it to the 6% and then doing the 4%? What are we doing with it?
Well, we're not doing the 4% twice.
Well, what's
It's
the
a
big
good question, and
impact?
I'm not sure we've addressed that with regard to reclassification. I don't think we have. So I think we need to discuss how we're going to do that. Because otherwise, you have people who are just going to end up below, right at step 1 at lowest, and that may or may not be reasonable for that person.
Well, in my thinking is we should probably move the person to the grade 6 first and then do the 4% increase. That way.
I have a whole slew of comments on how we implement this, so I would prefer we just vote on whether the person should be a grade 6 or not, and the position should be a grade 6, and then we can talk about I think there's a whole, you're gonna have to break it down into people that aren't changing grades, people that are changing grades, and then people that aren't at the min of the grades that they're being reclassified at, and the whole 4% or some other number.
Well, we were
Right, I'm
just
kinda-
doing this one first.
Yeah, so I think we're just saying, I think, Jerry, correct me if I'm wrong. The motion for this one is just gonna be simply to change the grade from 4 to 6.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk about how this gets implemented for, because there's a series of others that follow this one.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
This is probably.
I was
the
just
most-
asking for my own information as to how you were handling it.
I-
but we don't know.
I think that's gonna be.
But-
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's fair,
Yeah.
precedent, but at Jason's point, it's.
I understand.
yeah.
At this point, we're just deciding, should it be a job grade 6?
I think it should.
I agree. I think a motion to reclassify the deputy treasurer collector position to a job grade 6.
Second,
All in favor? Okay. We will come back. Because we're gonna have to. But I'd like to go through these other positions.
I think we gotta go through all the positions first, and then talk about implementation, because there's so many different categories there.
Okay, the next one is the business administrator. And Youth and Family Services, Collins Center recommends we move this from, no, it's now an administrative assistant, we move it to a business administrator 1 from a job grade 3 to a job grade 4. The job description is in your packet at page 54. Is there any discussion about the job description?
What do we have other business administrators at? Are we moving all business administrators to that category?
We're moving this administrative assistant to this category.
That's this one?
Well, there are other
More
ones.
coming.
that-
Right, so my question is, are we in general?
No,
moving business-
we're moving to the business administrator and youth and family services, who's administrative assistant, and the administrative assistant, the select board would be a business administrator 1 as well. Those are the 2 proposed moves from administrative assistant to business administrator.
And those are the only 2 business administrator ones we have in the SAP?
No, there's others
No.
currently now.
So what's differentiating them between, is there a difference? Is it just they?
Difference between where they are now.
Right, so we have business administrators, we have many throughout town, and we're only moving these 2.
We're
Solely
moving,
based on the job description.
we're moving these two positions from administrative assistant, which they are now, to business administrator 1.
Got it. Thank you. Thanks for the class.
Right, any discussion about the job description? Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the job description for business administrator 1 in youth and family services as set forth in the packet.
I mean, second.
All in favor? Okay, thank you. 5-0. All right, Collins Center has recommended if the business administrator 1 position is a job grade 4. And Collins Center has recommended that as a business administrator 1 position, this job should be reclassified as a job grade 4. Any discussion about that? Okay, I will make a motion to reclassify the business administrator 1 youth and family services to a job grade 4. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. 5-0. All right, moving right along. So similarly with the business administrator 1 for the select board. And this is at page 50. No, 57 in the packet. Again, the job description has been revised, an addendum has been added. And any questions about the job description? Okay, I would move to approve the job description for Business Administrator 1, Select Board. Is there a second? Okay, all in favor?
I'm gonna abstain on this one, just given Chelsea's on the select board.
Okay. So everyone, all in favor, just raise your hands again. Thank you. 4-0, 1 abstention. And the recommendation from the Collins Center is to reclassify this job from an administrative assistant job, which was is a job grade 3 to a business administrator 1, a job grade 4. We've already approved it as a business administrator 1, but so I would make a motion. Is there any discussion about this? Okay. I would make a motion to reclassify the business administrator 1 position for the select board from a job grade 3 to a job grade 4, as set forth in the package. Second.
Second.
All in favor? 1 abstention. 4-0 with 1 abstention. Okay, number 5. This is for a business. This is moving a position from a business administrator 1 in the zoning board of appeals to a business administrator 2. And this is at page 62.
This one?
Yeah. Yeah, 62. Any questions about the job description?
Just I guess a comment. For there's, as Dorian noted, there's business administrators already. I know we're not reclassifying, not approving new job descriptions for them because they're kind of staying status quo. Is there going to be a process to get these addendums for those positions? Because I think in particular, this one is probably comparable to some of the other ones. And I know Mary has done her own analysis, right? But I do think we need to be consistent and have these addendums for all. So I'm not saying we have to obviously have it for today to proceed, but is that process underway?
It is, and in fact, we have amended job descriptions for a lot of other jobs that we will have to approve at some point, but they have no impact on the budget.
Okay.
So we will do those over the course of time.
Okay. So I guess my comment in looking at the small subsection we had here, I struggled to see how it was different than some of the other ones we just talked about as a 1. But if Mary's professional opinion was that this really stood out to her based on how she understood the role, I'm not going to necessarily stand in the way, but I don't think the words in the paper really differentiate it. And I know I'm kind of mixing and matching job description and reclassification, but I think they go hand in hand.
Yeah, and I will say, in looking at a number of these, if I were just doing it myself, I might not have come to the same conclusions that Mary came to. But she, A, is a professional at this, B, spent a lot more time looking at things and talking to people. So at this point, I like you would think, at some point we just have to say we're paying her. This is what she does, and this is a recommendation. She's looking at the whole picture. And so I'm inclined to go, but I share your view that some of these, I would have expected more there to support what's happening. But anyway, so is there any further discussion about the job description? Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the job description for the business administrator 2 zoning board of appeal. For a second.
Second.
All in favor? 5. Thank you. Okay, a reclassification and same comments apply to this. It's Mary's view that this should be a 5. It's currently business administrator 1-4. Any discussion about reclassifying this to a job grade 5? Okay, I will make a motion to reclassify a business administrator to in the zoning board of appeals to a job grade 5. Second, all in favor? Thank you. 5-0. Moving on to number 6. This at no, that's the fire.
Here, you do about 65.
Yeah, the other was 65, but yeah. The relevant part is 65, but I guess it starts on 63. Any discussion of the job description? Yeah,
How does this job description compare to the police administrative?
okay, I mean, Mary spent a lot of time looking at that and talking to us. You know, I can't sit here and tell you how it does. I know that. And Vanessa wants to comment. John is asking if this job description differ from these. And I know Mary has spent a lot of time looking at that, but one of them is involved in budget.
Yeah, I think in the case of the police department, that employee is, more involved in the development of the budget and costing out, contracts.
You said police, you mean fire. Okay,
I'm sorry, I was talking about the distinction
Yeah.
between fire and police.
right.
All right, I've been led to believe that the fire assistant is far less of an assistant, so to say, than what the police assistant is. I can't find my, we don't have the police.
Police business coordinator is a A6. This is the what's being proposed here is an A5. So there would be, even if we approve this, there is a distinction still.
Yeah.
I mean, my comments from the last one, I think apply even more to this one. We're talking about a 2 classification jump here from a 3 to a 5. I can certainly see a 3 to a 4. Based on what we've just voted. I'm really struggling with all due respect to the employee in the department. I'm not seeing anything in front of us that justifies a 2 classification jump. And like, I know people will say probably was misclassified for years, et cetera. When we just did the deputy treasurer position, we had compelling evidence and reason to move it to classifications. I just don't see it here.
We can take this and grade this ourselves.
I'll second that.
Here's the problem with doing that. So we have change consultants, and the consultants have different methodologies for how they do this that not surprisingly produce somewhat different results. So we can go back and use the tool from the former consultant and come up with a score and tell us what grade it should be at. But that's likely to be different from what the Collins Center would produce using their methodology. The Collins Center has a different approach with regard to scoring. So as Dorian knows, because Dorian was involved in scoring under the old consultant, they had essentially a score sheet where you tally things up and then you total it up and you get a total and then look on a sheet and it would tell you, okay, that's a job grade 5, that's a job grade 6. Collins Center does not operate that way. They consider the total score as a factor, but not the only factor. to consider. They take, I'll just say, a more holistic approach. I'm not arguing better, worse, I'm just saying they operate differently. So it give you an example. So I asked, just sort of to do a reality check. I asked because Dorianne had been involved with the tool of the former consultant, and Vanessa had used it, and Dorianne used to be the +1 under the former chair, and then I got involved when I became chair. Just score the deputy treasurer position just to see, does this look reasonable to us? And it clearly did. It clearly was a job grade 6. I don't think there's any question about that. If you, and I have done it, I've done the exercise you've asked with the other jobs. And if you just use the HR tool, they're not going to produce the same result that the Collins Center does. They're not. I mean, someone could differ from my scoring, but even if you differ a little, it's still not going to produce the same. So the question becomes, and I don't purport to have an answer. I'm not wedded to any outcome here. Whatever the board feels is appropriate. Do we want to just go with what the Collins Center is proposing, given that that's sort of the system we'll be using going forward? We certainly have the right to say this just doesn't feel right to us. We're not going to go as far as it. I don't have strong feelings either way.
I have no problem with the job description, so I know I kind of mixed them a little bit, but I'm willing to move forward in the job description, then talk about classification. Then the job description is what's submitted in front of us. There's nothing there that seems incorrect or inconsistent.
We can go that through or not.
Yeah, so I'll move to accept the fire addendum.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? We're just voting on accepting
Job
the job description with the addendum that's in the packet. We're not voting on classification yet.
That's next.
Okay.
All in favor? 0, thank you. All right, now classification.
So this is like, I think it's unfair to come to an outcome without Mary here to explain. I think in fairness, you've sent us a memo saying this is my recommendation, but for these specific ones, there was no, I'll call it substance to help differentiate, right? Or support if someone were to ask us, why did you do this? Versus like when we talked with the deputy treasurer, there was a lot of substance behind that. My recommendation for purposes of today, and in fairness to both the employee and the Collins Center, I don't think we should mix and match GovHR anymore. Right, we made a decision as this personnel board. I guess Michelle, you're accepting this because I don't think you voted on that decision. We've made the decision to go to Collins Center, right? For this cycle, we need to be consistent in how we apply it. I would be willing to go to A4 today and leave open the possibility of an A5, but I would like Mary to come and explain why we should go that far and get us comfortable. I would vote in favor of an A4. I would vote no on A5, not because I don't know that it doesn't justify an A5. It's just we haven't been presented with a compelling case to move someone to classifications and what's in front of us.
Okay, and I'm fine. The only thing I have to say is Mary has been here for about 6 hours and she has talked, we have raised this issue with her. We did have a discussion with her about this position, how it compared to the police. We had all of that. So she has discussed.
This isn't about the police. This is actually about the other side.
But
This is about the business, this is about distinguishing it from a business admin one. The police are candidly in a different classification and not comparable as what has been determined.
yeah, again, I'm happy whatever the board wants to do. I'm not pushing anything on the board. I just,
All right, then I think I'm gonna do it this way. I'm gonna move that the personnel board support classification of A5, which is 2. I'll explain it in a second. Because I think we need to act on what Mary's recommendation was first. So I'm gonna move that the personnel board support the recommendation of the fire business coordinator 2 as an A5. Is there a second? So my discussion point is I think we need to act on the recommendation of Collins Center. If we vote this motion down, which I plan to vote no, just for full purposes of clarity, then I'll make a second motion. But I think we need to take what was in front of us first and act on that. I know it's confusing, but I think it's,
Sparks me right
Yeah,
there.
yeah. So I put this, I basically moved what was recommended by the Collins Center. That's all I've done. And I'm gonna vote no.
Okay.
But how do we go?
I mean,
How do we
I'm
go
not
back?
sure we have, I mean, we're voting on the reclassification. We can vote on whatever classification we want. We don't have to vote.
That's how you want, yeah.
We don't have to have a separate vote saying we're not going to accept the Collins Center recommendation.
Yeah, I don't want to fully discount it either. So I'll withdraw my motion and instead move that we reclassify the fire administrative assistant to become a fire business coordinator 1 under a
Administrator.
business administrator 1, which is a A4.
Second,
Any further discussion?
For purposes of discussion in the minutes, I want to be very clear that we will leave open the possibility that this position may further continue to an A5 upon us having Mary available for discussion, but it may not happen this fiscal year.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, all in favor? 5-0. All right, library supervisor, Ryan is here. Do you want to say anything in support of this? If you do, you have to come up to the table. There is a memo in the packet from Ryan at page 66.
I made the payment in case you guys have any questions. The trustees are gonna vote on this on Friday. I know that there isn't an example of the job description for this, so you're aware, what we're gonna do is just change the title. Like the job description will remain the same. So this is really a title change, but then I know you guys also have to review the reclassification request as well. So Jeff, you want me to stay here while you guys discuss and get your question?
I'm ready to vote on both.
I'm ready to.
Okay, I'll stay just in case.
All right. I move to approve the job description and the packet for the library supervisor position.
Second.
On favor? 0. Thank you. And any discussion about the reclassification? Okay, I will move to reclassify the library supervisor position to a job grade 4.
Second.
All in favor? 0. Thank you.
Easiest meeting I had today. Thank you.
Okay.
Take care, Ryan.
The next one, we don't have to do anything with the job description, there's no changes. The local inspector is in the exact same position as a part-time nurse and part-time electrician. In that they're being compensated well above their current job classification. For the nurse and electrician, what we decided to do was move them to a job grade 6. They're still outside the grid. At a job grade 6, we would red circle them, so they would only get the whatever cost of living amount that we vote. I don't see any reason to treat this any differently from the nurse and electrician, which would be to reclassify this from it's a C5 to a Schedule A grade 6. Any discussion?
I have no issue with that. I just think we should consider in future iterations, not this year, whether we just have some sort of per diem schedule. My understanding, Mr. Parent can correct me if I'm wrong, like when we get to like, I know the electrician is what we're talking about now, but like these folks are used as per diem, like when person is needed, they get a call, they do work on a project, they help with an inspection in this case. And so I think you could resolve some of the people being outside the bounds. I know that the nurse and COA may be slightly different, but I think you can resolve it that way and have a higher salary to acknowledge the per diem nature of it and the specialty nature of it without trying to fit it within the four corners of our ranges. But again, I think it's fine for today, but something to consider moving forward.
All right, I will move to reclassify the local inspector to a job grade 6 in Schedule A.
Second,
All in favor? Done. And the police dispatcher, this is. Again, we've already approved the job description and the Collins Center as record, well, this is was a part-time position, is a part-time position. Was a job grade 3 in Schedule C. Collins Center has recommended that we make it a job grade 4 in Schedule A. Any discussion?
I'll just say ditto to what I just talked about with in terms of per diem, but in favor of where we're going here.
I will therefore move to reclassify the police dispatcher from job grade 3 in Schedule C to job grade 4 in Schedule A. For second,
second,
all in favor? Nothing, thank you. Okay, that was the easy part. Now the hard part comes in how you do these reclassifications. So there are any number of ways you can do it. You could just treat them like everyone else, give them the 4%, and then put them on the grid, just like everyone else at the place in the new job grade closest to, but not below where they are. If you do it that way, obviously, however you do it, it's going to impact different people differently. And that creates issues at the end of the day. And I thought about this long and hard. We're not going to be able to solve every inequity today or tomorrow. It's going to be a process. There are other situations I think we're all aware of where what we're doing is going to create some inequity is the wrong word, but people not being exactly where they should be, either relatively to others or just for their own condition. We're going to have to figure that out over time. But again, I don't think we can do that today. But what we do need to do today is come up with a system that we think is the most fair and equitable now. And again, there are winners and there's not losers, but there's winners and more winners depending on how you do it. So with that, again, the simplest way is, and let me say about costs. We've been scrambling on this up to shortly before the meeting. So there's a document in your packet. It's at 84, maybe. Yeah, 84. That shows the cost for reclassifications was $30,727. After further study, those numbers have been adjusted because there were some things that were not quite right. So the number we're using now is 25,500, roughly 25,500.
This is for the
That is
reclassification
for the
costs?
reclassification, including the library page, all of the reclassification. So moving everyone from the C table into A and then doing the reclassification within A that we have approved.
so we say $5,200. Well,
So yeah, it's roughly 5,200, then the number that's in your pack.
And this, based on the vote we just took on fire, it includes what?
Now, it wouldn't include that.
But it includes all the other reclassifications we just voted on, so like deputy treasurer, for example. Library supervisor.
Yeah.
Youth and family.
Yeah.
Okay, so the number's not gonna be higher, right, than the 25, but not 30. Just using round numbers first. Based on,
It's gonna be higher, why?
the grade down.
because I guess they're saying they didn't have any, if you look at the spreadsheet we have, there was no reclassification contemplated for fire, which I'm not sure is consistent with the other methodology, because you would have thought it would have just gone down, but I think we're going up.
Okay, because fire is not included, that,
Yeah.
okay, that's fair.
So,
And I'll get to why fire, well, I don't know, but I want to get into why fire was excluded for a while, but, okay. It'll be, we'll talk about this at the next meeting, but. Okay, so it's gonna be, yeah,
so the reclassification cost is somewhere between 25 and 27,000, I guess. And that's gonna be a separate warrant article. Mark, Brian? Okay,
Just for the reclassification.
The cost.
I would think that would include the reclass as well as the cost along the grid.
but what about, so this is where I think it's gonna be important. Typically, if we did last year we did 3%, for example, right? That was just included in the budget and included in the bylaw by us adjusting the tables, right? That part is still gonna, like, there's gonna be basically two personnel board articles, is what you're telling me, right? One is the normal one that will cover some portion of everyone's increase. And then a separate article that will cover,
First
Yeah.
article is not gonna cover, there's no monetary piece of the normal article.
right,
So the first article is the bylaw and structure. Second article would be any monetary pieces regarding the reclassification as well as the grid that is approved in the first article.
why would those not be included in the general budget numbers?
Well, that's a process discussion.
Yeah.
I think that we just want to make sure that everyone's comfortable before that goes in.
Okay, good.
So in other words, if you don't, if the grid is not approved,
Yeah, okay, no, I
you
get it,
don't want that embedded in the budget, so I would think that if that article passes, here's the monetary component of what you just voted for.
So the
I'm
4%.
hoping the moderator will take that both articles together for discussion, please.
but you. Let's just. If you have what I'll call a doomsday scenario that the personnel bylaw gets voted down, right, which has happened before. And this supplemental article gets voted down, then no employee in town would see any increase other than people that are contractual. Is that correct?
If there are no changes, if the SAP article fails, and the change is not approved, current bylaw stays in place, and I would assume the second article would be tabled because there's nothing to consider for it.
But the grid would be in the first article.
Correct,
The actual concept of the grid
Correct.
would be in there. So if
correct,
that gets accepted,
yes.
but the next article doesn't pass, what happens?
see, I,
Yeah,
Percent is embedded is embedded as.
yeah, yeah, but,
No, I'm not talking about that.
reclass,
You understand, you're happy, but if it doesn't, 4% is it, right?
I'm just very wary of having a separate budget item out there for people to vote yay or nay on.
You can consolidate the whole thing into one if you want.
Yeah, assuming obviously advisory and select board are on board with what we want to do.
So
You can fix the language at the beginning of the article to do that.
So I think. Our job is to put forward something that we think. Will actually pass. Right, both based on the merit, like, what you don't want to have happen is a situation where we've spent all this time trying. To fix a lot of things, right, and like you said, we'll never be perfect, but it's hopefully better than what it was. And run the risk that you jeopardize everything else. That, like, there are plenty of employees that are what I'll call status quo, they're gonna get some adjustment. But not necessarily some of the adjustments that these reclassified employees would be, so. I would think, again, just throwing it out there for discussion. We should be putting forward an article that has the grid in it. and know where people are gonna be mapped on it and say that that's also the corresponding budget that whoever's presenting the budget will present if it passes. That way we've locked in some minimum increase such that if someone really has an issue with part B of this, which is purely reclassification, which I do think should be a separate article, it's just like a new position. I've always, again, this is philosophical, like a new position should be a separate article until then funded and be transparent. I think the grid gets mapped in with whatever we're gonna call cost of living, but the reclassifications stand on their own.
Well, I mean, the grid is gonna be part of the, say, of the warrant. That's going to be there in one. Again, we can talk this out, but I get nervous about having something out there, some numbers out there, whether it be $25,000, saying this is going to reclassify employees. And someone says, well, I don't want to spend $25,000 for that. Why do I want to, these people have been working there, why do we have to give them, they're already getting, whatever increase, why are we gonna give them even more money? I think it's an exposure that I worry about. Part of this is how is all this gonna play with advisory and select board? If advisory and select board must say, no, we're not supporting whatever, reclassifications, obviously we have to go back to the drawing board, but it's a strategy. It's to me, it's.
I think you're running the risk that approximately 6 or 7 reclassifications, like, forgive me, I don't have the true number, right? Jeopardize 80 plus employees' compensation if you don't separate them.
But how is someone,
It's our positions, yeah.
yeah, but so you think people are gonna look at whatever the big budget number is and say, there's $27,000 in there that I don't like, so I'm gonna vote it all down.
I think there'll be confusion on what people are voting. If not, it's all of this comes down to the proper presentation, right? If the proper presentation's made, I think it's, to me, really easy to justify. We do this every 4 years. And it was longer than 4 years in this instance. We found a subset of employees that were just way outside of their market, right? We had an expert tell us they clearly have comps in the area. This is the cost to fix it, to retain these employees. But when you start breaking pieces down, right, which is, this is a public document, everyone knows the different pieces. I think people start to get comfortable with certain things, especially when you start to equate, all right, what's 25,000 to an overall budget of 7 million? And how does that equate to my individual tax bill, right?
But you could say the same thing about moving people to the minimums. That's another $25,000, but you want to include that in the budget.
Yeah, so let me throw something out there. My personal belief is 200,000 roughly is what we're talking to implement this whole plan.
Yeah.
Last year it cost us approximately 100,000 to have a 3% increase for SAP employees. So we're talking about a one-time, right? But this will carry forward, right? Because all these folks, as long as they stay, will be subject to increases. That number is too high. We run the risk of this whole thing going sideways if we can't find a more reasonable path forward. So I'm going to throw something out there. The 4% that we talked about.
Okay, I think I know where you're going, and I don't think we can have a discussion on it because it's not in the agenda for the meeting today.
It's talking about implementation.
There's nothing about implementation.
I don't want
reconciliation of 2 votes on it, and it's nothing to do with the 4%. We don't have anything on the agenda about the 4%.
That's what I thought that was agenda for.
No.
All right, well, then we need to have another meeting because I cannot vote on this. And I don't think it would, on implementing it the way we have it right now.
Well, that's not how we implement the reclassification.
But I think you got to start with the base, the process. You have people that are just moving with the normal course of business and need to get on the grid. And then you have folks that are having what I'll call sizable changes because they were off. We need to agree on how we're implementing, I'll call it the baseline employee that are seeing no change in job description, classification first. We haven't agreed on that. Because we last meeting, we talked about like, do we get the grid in or not? We even took a motion, I think we did, right? And I don't think it was unanimous, but we didn't have this piece of paper in front of us that showed us everything. Now we have everything, which is what everyone was asking for. And I think we need to have a discussion of how do you implement it? Just baseline. Then how do we deal with the people that aren't in the min? I think that's actually a really easy part. And then how do you deal with the reclassifications once you've decided what you've done at the baseline?
But we already voted on how to treat people bringing them to the min.
Agreed, that's why I said it's easy.
Okay, but I don't understand your distinction between bringing people to the min and reclassifying. How are they different?
You have some people that just need to get to the min because they weren't reclassified, right? And then you have other people that got reclassified and need to get to the min of that band.
They're different things, but you're still moving people to put them to the appropriate place where they should be.
I understand that.
You're calling them different things.
I understand, but you're starting with this 4%. Go back to the meeting, and I remember when Paul was sitting right here, we were trying to figure out how to like give budgetary approval. I made a motion. It said for budgeting purposes, to direct the finance team to budget 4% across the board. We've now taken that 4% and used it as the starting point for the min-max and the grid process. So I'm just gonna give an example. I'm not gonna use a description. Person A is a salary grade 7. You take their current hourly rate. Let's just say they fall between step 1 and step 2. I'll call them step 1.5. Can't have that exist. In most instances, based on what is in front of us today, that person is moving from step 1.5 to step 4. Because of this process where we had the 4% and then we had to move them up a grade. So there's a flaw in how we're implementing the grid because we're starting with 4%.
But we always knew that. We always knew there was an additional 1% cost of putting people onto the grid. We talked about that.
But it's more than 1% in a lot of instances, depending upon where
But the
someone.
about 1% cost, it's about to put people on the grid was 27,000 roughly. Just about 1%.
But it says 40,000 in front, it's 39,970 is what's
Well, we
in our
had a
packet.
discussion, but this is, remember, we had the discussion with the last meeting about when to implement the grid and how much savings we could realize by holding it off. So we knew the cost of that. I think we've always known about what the cost of that is. It's not something that we just found out.
I guess what I'm saying is you can implement the grid if you start with a number lower than 4.
Okay, again, I'm not going to have any discussion about the 4% this meeting. I think that would be a violation of the open meeting law.
So then we need a separate meeting to discuss how we're going to implement this.
Well,
Because
again, we can discuss how we're implementing the reclassifications without knowing what that number is. We're not a financial body. That's not our job. There are other people. We want to know sort of what the numbers are. We don't want to do crazy things, but there are other people whose job it is to look at these things and say, you know, whatever. We're not a financial, we don't have the information. So for me, I just need to know what the process is, what we think that there, whether it could be 20%, doesn't matter to me. Whatever that dollar is, but how you put them on seems to me separate from what the actual cost is.
I think we have to be cognizant of what the cost is before we recommend.
What I said the last meeting.
Yeah.
If we think
The
these
summary.
classifications are deserved, and we all voted unanimously to do that,
Uh-huh.
then I don't think we can later say, we don't want to state that.
I don't think that's what he's saying. I think what he's saying is, it's how we're presenting it for the SAP and for people to be accepting of this $200,000 and the breakdown of how we're explaining this. So we have the SAP. The SAP includes the 4%. Is that correct, Brian? Okay, so there's your 4%. Now we have this other group that are incorrectly categorized when we did this whole revision and looking at the job descriptions. So you're saying you want to have a second explanation for this group of people as a second vote, or do we want to, you don't think that if we put it all in one warrant article, it is going to pass? Is that?
I just think the more you pack into something, the more you're asking for potential trouble. And I think our job as the personnel board, while we're trying to look out for every single individual, we need to effectuate the changes that we think will impact the majority of them. And, I'll call it, let's get if we can have any slam dunks, if there is such a thing, let's take them, let's explain them, and let's get the support. It obviously starts with the free meetings, right, which I think we need to have soon, so people understand and we can get direction, right? We may have to pivot, right? We could all be completely off course here with our discussion, but I think the grid is a fundamental process that came out of Collins Center. The reclassification is a corresponding result that comes there. I would still vote in favor of one package article, don't get me wrong, but I think you have to step it through and say, these are the minimum thresholds that we as a personnel board are going to agree to, but also a maximum. Because what I'm trying to get at, Barry, with some of the way the math works, is I don't want someone that's been reclassified, so arguably was in the wrong pay band to begin with, getting a lower percentage increase than potentially someone that just got lucky based on what decimal point they had in their current number times 4%, then how that factors into a grid that was in 2% increments, which we all agreed on. So that's, I'm just trying to make sure we're seeing and not creating any issues. And obviously, until we agree on that baseline, that's where I struggle.
I think until it's just, that's gonna happen. I mean, unless we go through job by job and look at how each one plays out and say, oh, well, we want you to be there, or we want you to be there. It's very difficult to do it in a way that doesn't impact different people, some more positively than others. And I don't know how we fix that in a cohesive, rational way in the time that we have. Again, I'm sympathetic to those. There are situations I would like to be able to fix, but I don't know how I do that without saying, okay, I'm going to give you I'm going to move you up 2 steps, or go ahead, John, you want to say something?
We're looking at 2 separate increases to get to the 196. Correct? We're looking at the reclassification to get them on the grid, and we're looking at the 4% increase. I would think that we would stand a much better chance of getting them approved separately. And an article to approve the 4% increase, that's gonna 125 with them, and have a separate article that if the town wants to right the wrong of the people that have been underpaid or underrated, have that as a separate item.
I mean, we all could have different opinions about how people are going to react. I'm reminded of Jason's presentation at last year's town meeting, and how that went in terms of people seeing numbers and saying we could take it. Just when you show distinct numbers up there, it's easier for people, in my mind, to say, I'd have to vote for that. Yeah, again, there's no right answer. I don't want the board to say, the way I would do it is the right way. I think we all have to have input in it.
My opinion is that, if the town wants to correct wrongs, reclassify, then that should be their right to do that, separate of the normal increase that's gonna be.
But again, I don't understand how that's different from bringing people up to the minimum.
I don't think we're talking, I think, I don't hear anyone saying we're not gonna bring someone up. If someone's.
No, I was being said was we include bringing people up to the minimum in the budget. And we'd have a separate item for reclassification. That's what I thought I was hearing. And I don't understand why you would do that.
Because in the SAP, you're gonna adopt this grid.
Right.
And you're gonna have, let's just say someone is not reclassified for a second. You have an A4 that doesn't hit the minimum in that new grid. By just approving the SAP with that new grid, in knowing that that person's an A4, they automatically go up to the minimum. It's just a fact, right? Like, I know we haven't had to deal with that before because of the methodology for many years, right? As everyone was just adding 2%, 3%, 1% to the min, right? And you never had that issue. But I think just by default, if you get the grid approved, it's gonna automatically bring anyone up in an existing classification up to the minimum, which we have a lot of those, right? Then you go to the smaller subsection of people that clearly have a reclassification that would not be at a min. So that's the difference, is the reclassifications are really not a minimum situation based on what I can see. That's just how do you set them within their new grade.
But it's transparent. Really just based on our vote. Because we have a table here that tells you what job is in what grade. So I still don't understand how people are going to vote to approve the SAP. No different than they're approving the grid within the SAP. It's all part of one. I still don't understand how they're different. But
Personnel board brings forward the article, Mark.
just the approval of the SAP, the
So
revised SAP.
this is why I think we should get with select board and advisory sooner rather than later and have this discussion. Because if you've got a elected board of 5 and an appointed board of 7, all on the same, roughly on the same page of how this is gonna go, maybe you do collapse it into one and it becomes one. But if you find that half of them don't support the reclassifications, but everyone is really unanimous around this grid and around getting certain level of pay increase, that will guide you. Mark has placeholders for 2. You can always collapse.
No, I agree that this issue of how this should be presented, we don't have to decide that today. There should be a process.
Yeah.
I think we're on the same page on that. Where I think we're hung up on, I don't see why we can't figure out how we're going to do the reclassification now. I don't know what's preventing us from why we're not able to figure out the implementation of the reclassification now.
Because there's a baseline assumption that it's a minimum of 4%.
Because that's what we voted. I think we have.
We voted that for budgeting purposes.
And that's what we do. That's all we do. There's nothing in the SAP that says that.
But at the time we took that motion, it was trying to allow the finance team to move forward with the budget. Then all of a sudden, we've got schedules in front of us to try to get this in to the SAP for July 1st, which I'm fine with. We're almost there. We're almost there. Let's get it done. Like, we all want to be done with it. So let me simplify this. The schedule that's in front of us today right? The Excel that was sent to all personnel board members that sums to the 196 that breaks down the various components. I realize there's some true ups. The folks highlighted in green, with the exception of one position, are reclassifications, correct?
Yes.
The methodology that was used here. The methodology that was used here, right, was 4%. And then put them on a grid and see where they end up. By my math. Everyone that was in a reclassified position is getting at somewhere between 5 to 6%. Roughly. Increase once you do that, because what I found when I went one by one is their classifications overlapped to begin with,
Right.
right?
Right.
So like, right, because obviously the high end of you're right, like goes to the low end. So to me, a lot of these reclassifications actually aren't the min situation. If you actually think about it, right? Very few of them are min. There's a few, right? I think like there's a few, which like, for example, deputy treasurer is jumping 2 classifications. If that wasn't a larger adjustment, you'd be like, well, what does 2
Yeah.
classifications really mean? From a reclassification perspective, I'm okay with the methodology that's presented in this. I would like we can't discuss it today. I would like a further discussion of those that are not being reclassified, because I think we can say with a straight face, reclassification and putting someone on the grid costs money. Cost between 5 and 6%. It's going to be greater than a normal municipal increase. Is it perfect? No, but I think these folks are the exception of the ones that are really jumping multiple. They're ending up like not at step 1. So,
I mean, it varies. There's, without going into names, there's one person with reclassification will get 2 cents an hour more than they would have gotten just with the 4% and being placed on the grid. So that's what I'm saying. It hits everyone.
but like, let's just say fundamentally, I thought anyone that got reclassified should have had a minimum of 6%. I'm making that number up. I don't necessarily believe it. But we don't have the ability to arbitrarily say someone should be able to get at least a 6% increase, because then it won't fit into the grid.
Right, but everyone's getting at least 4%.
Based on the department, yes.
Right, so we do know that. So, okay, so you would be fine with doing the reclassification along the lines of what's set out in this.
Nothing on that point seemed egregious to me.
Okay, I'll take that as a yes.
Yeah.
That's as close as I get. Okay, then let me think of how I would phrase it. Any further discussion I have to take to ask on this point?
No.
Okay.
Are you gonna make a motion?
He's trying to
I was hoping to, but go ahead.
I would respectfully ask that, look, we have general agreement on how the reclassifications should work. I think part of the confusion and the debate back and forth over the last 15 or so minutes is because we didn't have, we had all the pieces, but sometimes putting the puzzle together is not as simple as it looks. It may be simple for some people, but not others. Call me the one that didn't put the puzzle together the right way the first time. Yeah, my kids hit it on me, right? So I would suggest we have a general agreement on reclassification. We're bound by our agenda that we don't want to take it any further. I think for our next discussion, right? Nothing has changed yet for budgeting purposes today. Whatever we decide to meet next, I think there should be one encapsulating motion that encapsulates each of these pieces and how we're implementing them. And you may choose to break it into sub motions, but I think we should have the framework agreed to in discussion. Because what I don't want to do is have a motion here today and then have to potentially backtrack if we discuss something different next time. Because I don't want anyone's expectations set too high or set too low. And I think we also have the opportunity to, employees are probably watching and listening or watching the replay, just provide feedback once and for all that we've got this right before we go to, these advisory and select board and any other pertinent boards to, this is why we believe this is the right path. And they can certainly be assured that we had the appropriate level of debate on it and to just ram it through.
There's been no ramming through.
Right.
I hope people don't feel like we've been ramming anything through. Okay. Not a numbers person. So just to be clear with you, Brian and Kristen, in terms of implementation, how you put this together. So you gave people the 4% increase. You then moved them to the new job grade and then placed them on the grid at the step closest to but not below where they fell on the grid. Is that correct? Everybody understand that's how they did it? Okay, so I will make a motion that for those people for whom we have approved reclassifications, that they, after receiving the 4%, after receiving whatever increase across the board increase is granted, that they be moved to the new job grade and placed in the step closest to, but not below, where their rate of pay then would be. Is there a second?
Do we know that that's what the numbers?
That's what these numbers, that's what these
Okay.
numbers.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, thank you.
I know you still like.
Oh, sorry. All right, thank you for that, and rather than skip here to number 10, if John will indulge me for one moment, we'll go back to A1. So we have two not conflicting votes, but I don't think they're both well, we have two votes. We have a vote implementing the salary schedule from the Collins report effective 7/1/2023. And we have a vote implementing the grid on 7/1/23. I don't think we intended to do both of those things. I think we either want the grid or the salary schedule. And I think,
But isn't the grid just a more detailed version of the salary
but
schedule?
we don't want both of them in the SAP. That would be, there's no need for the salary schedule in the SAP if you have the grid. So here, and so I think we have to just clean that up with a vote. I do want to say a couple of things at the risk of repeating myself and however it may end up. We've talked a lot about the money. The reason we decided to move it to 7/1 was because it was simpler, easier to present, simpler. But we talked about there is a cost to doing that. We're spending, I thought the number was 13.5, but who knows what but it's over $10,000 certainly to move it up.
Hang on, isn't it 40,000 based on what we have in front of us to implement this on 7/1?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay, so it's $20,000 we're talking about then, if you move it to 1/1, roughly.
yes,
Okay, so we're spending $20,000 to make it simpler. But the other thing we have to think about is where that $20,000 is going. It's not going to reward anyone for performance. It's not going to, because we think one person should get more money than another. It's completely arbitrary where that money is going. Some people are going to get $1 an hour more. Some people are going to get 8 cents an hour more. This depends on where they happen to fall on the grid. So it just seems to me to spend $20,000 in this environment for simplicity, when we're really getting, I don't think much bang for the buck for that $20,000, doesn't make sense. But I've made the point before, I just throw that out there.
I firmly believe it should be on a July 1 date. I think I made the motion last time to have it July 1 of 23, because I think we did all this work, why you're gonna just wait a year to implement it. I hear you. You don't want just 20,000 randomly in the middle of the year. I do not support a January date. I think it's either July 1 of 23 or it's July 1 of 24. If it's July 1, 23, it comes back to the discussion I want to have at a future meeting. If it's July 1 of 24, then that 40 comes out. And everyone has their 4% or greater, depending upon if they were a min situation or reclassification. That's, I think, the decision that's in front of us.
Okay, so you're saying take the grid out completely?
I don't want to,
No,
because I think you can get to the same result of having the grid in there and getting people what we've kind of already messaged. But
Nobody knows what the environment's gonna be a year from now in terms of inflation, what we might be looking at. You know, whenever we do the grid, there's gonna be a cost to that. And you know, maybe next fiscal year, 2 fiscal years down, it's gonna be better time to do it than now. Probably
Not
not,
getting any
I
better.
agree. Certainly not from the town finances perspective, but in terms of the overall cost of living and what we see as what we need to do from a COLA perspective. We don't know what that could be. But, yeah, I mean, the general point is the same, is that money, we could be going back and saying, look, we're trying to work with the town on this, we'll, whether it's 20,000, 40,000, I don't care, but I just think we should try to do something to show we recognize what we're trying to do is costly, and we're trying to be as reasonable as we can with that.
I completely agree, but I can't say anything more.
Well,
I think what I want to discuss at a future meeting, I think it gets us to where I think we're all want to be, but
and I think I fundamentally disagree with it, but you and I should talk offline. But we can schedule another meeting to do that, but
Tomorrow I'll get this over.
we got it 48 hours.
yeah, but Barry, I guess I would vote against any January 1 adjustments. It's messy from a payroll perspective, it's messy from a budgeting perspective. I don't see the benefit of spending that 20, to your point of just throwing 20,000 away from July 1 of December 31. At the end of the day, we're not throwing it away. It's going to high value employees. It just is not being
Well, it's going to
distributed.
employees.
It's
It's going.
every employee is highly valued. It is just being disproportionately allocated based on, candidly, math from the past that had no, right? Mr. Purple, you know, right, like did a market analysis when he hired each of these people, and as long as it was below the midpoint, he had sole authority to, right, like in,
Right. When you
Yeah.
say disproportionately allocated, you mean arbitrarily. It will be arbitrarily distributed.
well, it's disproportionate because if you're 0.1
Right.
cent above your classification, you get rounded up to the next
Yeah.
grade.
For me, that's arbitrary.
Okay.
So that's why I don't see anything. So you would vote in favor of putting it off to 7/1/24 or 7/1/23.
My vote would be, if we're gonna do 7/1/23, we need another meeting because the total number that's on the piece of paper in front of us, I don't think is gonna work. If we move it to 7/1/24 in terms of the grid implementation, then I think we have a number that we can work with, but we are throwing away candidly, at least 25 to 50% of our hard work as a personnel board, because pretty much dead on right away, we all agree the grid approach was the way to go. So that's, I think, the downfall to doing that, but at the end of the day, concessions need to be made, and you need to find the right balance for what's gonna pass. Because we have an egg on our face if personnel bylaw does not pass, and these folks do not have a increase at the end of the day.
Okay, I mean, how do others feel? For me, and you know, we asked Brian about this before. I don't know how big a deal it is for you to do this mid-year. I think you just said it's a policy decision. You'll do whatever you need to do, essentially, if that's a fair characterization of what you said.
Yeah, but you need to have the money in the budget to do it. can't just pull that kind of money out of.
But the
hat.
money would be in the budget, because you know you're gonna be spending that in the second half of the fiscal year. I mean, you know that now. If we voted in that way.
To meet Friday. Thursday,
We're not
sooner
on,
than later.
we're not on to that yet.
Today's only Monday, right?
Today is only Monday.
Feels like Friday already.
I'll leave it out. All right,
Barry, John?
oh, sorry.
What comes off of 7/24? You're gonna be faced with the same situation next year. We're just kicking the can down the road by doing that. That doesn't correct Jason's point, which is a very valid point. It does not correct it, and there really is no logical way around that. If you're gonna do a 7% rate, some people by nature are going to fall in between. It would be unfair to the employee to put it lower, even though it may seem unfair to the town to put it high. But common rationale has always been in business, you always favor the employee. Nothing should ever be taken from an employee, otherwise you just favor previous.
Yeah, I don't think anyone on this board is in favor of taking anything away from any employee.
It's just not gonna fix the problem in another year, it just doesn't.
I don't know, I just go with the assumption that I have more faith in the taxpayers having a great love and respect for our employees, that they want to do right by them. And this is gonna pass. I don't know, that's just how I feel. So I just kind of,
That speaks right to my point that if you separate and put these right-hand column, 70,000 on a separate vote, the taxpayer will do that because they want to favor the town employee.
yeah, I just think that if we start breaking it down, John, we start adding confusion to this where I'm not really sure how to handle it, so I'm going to agree with Jason. I think we need to have another meeting. But we need to be as transparent as possible. I believe we can explain it all and break it down in one article instead of trying to break it down. As long as we explain it and we're very transparent about what it is we've done and the steps we've taken to get there, I have faith that the taxpayers are going to support this and they're going to support their employees. That's just me.
I completely
That's
agree.
me.
I think it comes down to the wording, the warrant
Right.
and all of that.
It's the presentation and the explanation. But I firmly believe that the town people are gonna be behind their employees and they're gonna take care of them. We're gonna do right by them. We'll have to cut somewhere else, like meditation classes for purple.
I think-
I have a true belief that the taxpayers will do right by our employees,
Yeah.
but you're correct. And it is the presentation and it is the explanation. It's how we present it to them so that they understand, really understand what we've done, how we've gotten to where we are, and they have a firm understanding of why they need to vote this through, so.
Okay, it sounds like we're gonna have a meeting in the relatively short future, so let's put off. We don't have to decide this now.
We're almost there. You're right, like, I think we're almost,
I thought we were closer than, well, this morning I thought we were closer than I do today. Let me put it.
Concern with the, you have the funding to get everybody in the grid area, you know. Jason, you worried about the SAP part not passing, but the article not passing the fund?
I think where we're at, I think the reclassification is where we're at right now. I think any one of us five could easily stand up and defend the process we've undertaken, right? It's not like we just got a memo from Mary and accepted, right? Like we've done our due diligence, in my opinion, this group of five. So I'm not concerned with any one individual component. I think it's a policy decision of how the board, the select board, if they have any strong views, want the warrant to appear. And we don't candidly have visibility into the overall budget situation other than to know it's dire every year, but like we get, right? Like, especially the part that impacts you, like the residential shift, right? Even if we kept expenses at zero, right? You're gonna tell me my property tax bill is going up a certain amount based on,
The one-
well, yeah, I get it, but like, you know what I'm saying, like, yeah, so, but like, that's what I'm saying is like, I think if presented correctly, this thing should be totally fine and be broken down into the components that are here. My personal worry right now is leaving outside the minimum, leaving outside the reclassification. People that aren't part of that category still getting 6 to 7%. I think that's going to be I think that's what people will latch onto. They're not gonna latch onto it because they go and look at Mark's budget book that he comes up with finance team. They're gonna get it because advisory's already latched on. And is gonna make candidly probably a presentation against it, you know, because that's at least the indication I have at this point, so.
I mean, what we're doing equates to a 6.5% across the board increase, which I certainly wouldn't have supported. I doubt whether anyone else on the board would have supported. But from the town's perspective, doesn't matter how you break it down, it's 6.5%. That's a lot in this environment to be asking departments who are otherwise under a lot of pressure to keep expenses down, if not cut, to say, oh, by the way, you got to add this 6.5%. It's a big nut, and so yeah, we have to be in a position. I think we have a good story to tell, but it's a lot of money. It's way more than we've ever been involved with recommending more than double.
Yeah.
What I've been involved in since I've been on the board. So yeah, we can't just sort of blithely walk into this and say business as usual is what we're offering and expect everything.
I'm just trying to understand, we have all the SAP changes, all the work we've done goes in one article. And then we have additional funding, that's the last time we started with, is that correct, Brian? We have going right after, is that correct?
Well, I think that's still to be determined.
That's what we're trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Your question is basically if second piece doesn't pass, is that?
Yeah, like basically, if you break it up into pieces, I'm trying to get, my primary goal here is that the employees see all employees, regardless of who they are, see some increase on July 1 of 24. If the SAP fails,
Yeah,
I'm not-
changing.
yeah, like, I'm not sure the mechanisms we have to get pay increases without another town meeting. What would we, if the SAP failed, what would happen, Mark?
You have increases inside the budget for.
Yeah, you have the whatever the number is, you get 4%.
But no one would get to the minimum,
No.
But no,
It-
you wouldn't.
Based on your raise and type. But you
Yeah.
can't give raises if the taxpayers were.
Well, but they would vote it, they vote whatever the. 4%.
So in my scenario, Dorian, I was saying if we put everything in the SAP, all the wording changes, and that fails. And like no, like motion or amendment is made on the floor, then everyone stays in the current classification. But what Mark's saying is he still would have the mechanism as long as the budget passes to at least give 4% or whatever they budgeted
Okay.
in that. That's what I'm trying, that's what happened a couple years, right? Like when. But if you were subject to a reclassification or you were below the min, you're not gonna see that.
None of the fixes would.
It wouldn't, yeah, I think I wouldn't blow them in because it would still be the old salary schedule.
Right. Which no one probably
Yeah.
wants.
Would
Right.
just be the 4%.
Yeah.
Okay, let's put that off
It's
until.
not just 4%.
Yeah.
It's pretty big.
Exactly. And let's do the job patiently.
We're just gonna hold them and put it during that meeting.
And there is a memo in the package from John. Page 75. Should be the guest. I'm doing all the work here. Yes, welcome, John.
Hi, everyone. When we last met on December 16th, you had asked me to reach out to some neighboring towns to see how they handle on-call stipends for the facilities department. We spoke with several area towns and really got a mixed bag. Some facility departments are wrapped into the DPW, so naturally they get the DPW stipend. Other towns are now breaking out the facilities department separately. So when I spoke to them, the overwhelming things are we're gonna mimic the DPW department. You know, they said naturally, if they're giving up their time, it should be the same, which is basically the argument I made last time. But two towns that had the facility stipends right now in the area were Shrewsbury and North. Now, what Shrewsbury does is they have 4 supervisors that are on-call rotating schedules, similar to what we have. We currently have the 3 maintenance technicians, plus the part-time electrician, so they only have to be on call theoretically 1 week a month, so they can have their personal lives the other 3 weeks. Now, how they stipend these people is they get 1 hour paid per weekday and 2 hours of pay per weekend day and on holidays. So needless to say, it's either 9 or 10 or theoretically could be 11 in our case, hours of overtime a week at time and a half. Now what Northborough does, they are way more generous. They literally, they serve them on call for a day. They get a full day off. They get 10 hours of overtime. Plus they get a 2 hour minimum for every call they come in at time and a half. Which that's just way off the charts. I mean, that's way more than what we're looking to do. I think if we were to mimic something similar to Shrewsbury, we could do that, and I think it'd be fair to the town. I think it'd be fair to the employees. What I would recommend if we do that, I took the salaries of the 4 employees, add them together, divided by 4, so we get an average salary. The average salary for all the 4, because again, I don't want people getting different pays for stipends. This is an apples to apples comparison. If employee A is giving up his life for a week, employee B is giving up their life for a week, it is worth the same per day. And that came out to $34.23 an hour. So if we were to do what Shrewsbury does, basically we do the 1 hour on the weekdays and 2 hours on holidays or weekends. Then we just multiply that out by 34.23, and that's what that week's stipend would be. Because let's face it, we have 14 holidays a year here, so they do have holiday stipends. One thing I don't think we can address this tonight, but I would like to address this at a future meeting. When my team gets called in, unfortunately, most of the call-ins we get are forced call-ins, snowstorms, water pipe, et cetera, et cetera. If there was a holiday or someone had a vacation day or a sick day and they're on call, they only get straight time. They come in on Christmas Day, it's straight time because there was a holiday. I think we should address that in the future. Again, we're not going to address it tonight, but that's something we should look at. Over time, when you're forced in, should be time and a half. Your DPW has that, the neighboring towns all have that. It's
So let me just, New Year's Day. Someone was already getting what they're currently allowed to get, right?
Yep,
They were being paid for the holiday
yep,
in general.
yep.
When you go and do your payroll because they came in for 3 hours to do something,
Straight time on those 3 hours. It's not time and a half.
but they're already, it's actually double time. Because they're getting paid for the holiday. So I get where you're going at, like you're saying, in some municipalities, it's 2.5 or 3 times pay. I
Your time and a half.
But they're getting technically double time if they come in, because they're already being paid for the holiday. They're just getting straight time for the
Right,
hours that they're here.
because every employee gets paid for the holiday.
Right, I understand, right? And I understand some communities would pay double time for that, especially I'll call them premium holidays.
Mhm.
But I just want to be clear, they're not just getting straight time for that day,
Exactly, yes.
but they are
Oh,
obviously
yes.
having to
Yes.
work when they didn't. do
Yes,
it.
oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Keep going, sorry.
So I think that's something we should look at down the road too, because it's forced time. I mean, you look at, you could take the clerk's office, if they have an election during Veterans Day week, which can happen. There goes the overtime. It's straight time at that point too for them. Because if they have to come in, it was a holiday. It's forced overtime. Now, if my employees ask, hey, you mind if I stay to finish tonight, finish the job? That would be straight overtime. It's like, you want to get it done. I understand we do need to get it done, but that's not a forced overtime. That would not be a time and a half issue to me. That's a straight time issue. But when we're forcing you in, that should be a time and a half issue. And we do get snows. It's not uncommon for my team to be in on Thanksgiving, on Christmas, on New Year's Day. This year it was uncommon. Though we did have one employee that had to come in the first day off for the Christmas holiday. I've been here on Christmas Day with an employee. It just happens in this field. So I just want to make sure we're compensating them fairly moving down the road.
Okay, getting back to the original question, so I think you were saying that you were looking for 7 times 30, 34.
34.23, it would be 9 times, some weeks 10, depending if they have a holiday, because weekends would be 2 hours.
Okay,
We can only go up to $200 at this point.
At the current rate, yes. So we would have to adjust that. I would gladly write you up an article blurb that would summarize all this crystal clean and clear, state it's only for the facility staff. We can make this very concise.
But you're talking, well, I guess there's two issues, right, Barry? Like, there's the current, like, it's what you want to do starting
Yep.
today. And then it's what you want us to potentially put into the warrant, right?
Well, we wouldn't change any of this today, no.
So you're
We're talking
good with your-
about FY 24.
yeah, I mean, the two issues I see is one, if we want to rinse this off, so it's only the facilities department.
Yes,
And secondly, we have to figure out what's the number, what
Yes.
number are we gonna allow? to Be paid, I think those are the two things,
It's just over for 9 times, it's 308, and for 10.
well, I mean,
250, you want to go up?
you could, I mean, one thing we could do, so we're not even, and I know this is because of. The prior action by a prior personnel board limited you beyond what the SAP limited you to. So in other words, the SAP says 200 to meet, but you were constrained from going above, whether it was 150. Right,
well, we did it for mathematical purposes in the beginning, so if someone had covered someone up a day, you take the 151, whatever, and divide it by 7, it's easy to do a day.
yeah. But I mean, so there's already authority in the SAP to do 200.
200, right. So we would need to change the wording and the dollar figure so we could cover this going into FY 24. Because we're not budgeted this year to do any change, and the stipend line is what the stipend line is. It's budgeted for its current amount, even though the SAP may say 200, if the funds aren't there.
Right, so you're saying
It's
even
not
if we
that-
took action today to deal with FY 23, you would run out of budget and have
Absolutely,
have
yes.
an issue with the table over there.
So I mean, I don't know that we need you to write, I mean, seems to me we could just looking at the language, change it to say. Employees in the facilities department shall be eligible to earn a weekly stipend not to exceed, and then plug in whatever the number is. And be done with it, I think.
Yeah, we could take the highest week of the year, and we'll just use that as, we'll take one of the most vacation days, and that's gonna be the highest week of the year,
So it's a
probably
matter,
Thanksgiving week.
I think it's a matter of what people are comfortable with in terms of the number.
Well, with the way we're blowing it up, we must just go for the gold. I think we need to.
And like I said, I definitely want to do it on the average of the salaries. I want to keep this apples to apples. Because again, my part-time employee makes more than my full-time employee, so. my
So
full-time
how do you
employees
do
are
your,
the same
how do you do
thing.
your schedule, how does someone get on call? Like, is it just a
It's a
rotating?
rotating schedule.
Including
If someone
yourself?
can't do it for, they'll swap with someone usually, or we've had someone out with a medical, so the other guys have been kind enough. They've been on call 2-3 weeks in a row. They're getting tired of it.
So there's no like, I'll call it, it's equally distributed
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
and candidly, people could go without it. If
Oh, yeah.
they would gladly pass their week off for the,
But the hard part is getting someone to want to pick it up.
right,
That
but
is-
it's just
that is
part
the
of the job
difficulty.
and expectation.
Yeah, it is a difficulty. I mean, someone pointed out to me, and I didn't even think of this one. We know that they can't go to dinner and have a drink. We know they can't go far from home. One of them pointed out the other day, because I was going to a game, we had to take a separate car. It's like you have to have a separate vehicle from your family that you're going somewhere with, because if you get called, you gotta leave.
It's like a doctor.
You know, it's,
That's what you've chosen as your field.
but they don't get the stethoscope, the cool white coat.
Yeah, but that's, I mean, that's.
So Barry, who's gonna come up with the language you're thinking?
Again, I can dictate the language for the record, it's like as soon as we decide what the number is. That's the only open
So you're
piece of it.
saying 34.23 an hour, John?
That's based on
And then
FY
you're-
24 is the average. yeah.
All right, so then you're saying either times 9?
Let's see, so we'll take Thanksgiving week, that's definitely gonna be the longest week of the year, 9, 10, 11, that will be. 11 times, what do I have, 34, 23.
Well, I have 10 because you gave us the 9 and the 10.
Right, but Thanksgiving's a longer week, so the most you could be is 376.53.
Okay, but I'm wary of just putting that figure in because.
Yeah, just say not to exceed what, 380. I mean,
Well,
Oh, no.
you're taking a week and then saying you can do that in any week.
no, yeah, that's why I would do the wording similar to Shrewsbury. They get 1 hour per day weekday, 2 hours holidays and weekend. based on an hourly rate of, and I want to put that hourly rate in because that's gonna, or the average hourly rate, because that's gonna adjust the raises every year. So we want to word this properly. We want to keep it clean and concise, so you don't have to revisit this year after year.
Don't even meet
Yeah,
really soon. Why don't we work this language
Yeah.
off?
yeah, because we're not gonna
Yes.
be able to do it just the way I thought.
I mean, I was thinking it was gonna be hourly rate. That's why I was thinking like, I kind of was along the Shrewsbury element of let John go with that, and obviously some people will make a little more than others, but
Yeah, but
If you don't-
it's 50% more, that's
Yeah.
considerable.
Yeah.
Part-timers and
so, yeah, I agree. with
We'll,
this.
we'll come back,
I think it's gonna be one number. I don't think you should try with these.
Yeah.
I think it's a number higher than 200. I think you find a number and we can revisit it each year if salaries are changing dramatically or it's not incentivizing people enough to do
we
that
can go
portion of the job.
4% or you're gonna
okay. So we'll, to be continued. Thank you, John.
All right, thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
You too.
next.
Yeah, all right.
Where's the pizza, Mark? Where's dinner?
Probably in your car.
Is there any other?
Give you $5,000 for some dinner.
Next, is there any other business? No other business, any public comment?
No.
Board calendar, okay, so we're meeting again soon. Text to my wife, where are you? Okay. How long can we have here, Brian? Today is the 9th. So the earliest we could meet would be the 12th, right? What do people's calendars look like on the 12th or 13th?
I have a haircut.
Mark and I have a meeting on
Good.
Friday from 9 to 10:30
Okay,
that we're not able to.
okay.
The agenda is the facilities topic and the topic that I,
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. We're gonna call this Jason's meeting.
I think it can be pretty, I'm gonna go on record, I think it can be very quick. I think we have two options. We may agree, we may not agree, but I think it's just an alternative version and we can all make our decisions and move on. So I think it's a quick meeting, is what I'm trying to say.
Lock it in.
Michelle, you work.
I do work,
Yes,
so I don't know that I'm gonna be helpful on either of those days. If you want me to be physically here.
can you do one by Zoom?
Looking for blank space.
I used to have a calendar like
Yeah. I could possibly do it early. Good, how about, can we do early?
Early is better
Which
for
day?
me.
which day?
Friday? How early can we?
What time you say your meeting is?
9.
Oh, I forgot, I'm so sorry. I forgot.
But what's early?
6.
8.
We can do 8. We're
Hang on. Is my wife in that meeting? Yes, I think she is. Right, I see some cryptic thing. I need to take the kids to school, so I would have a hard stop at 8:30. So we'd have to probably start at 7:30, so I guess.
What day are you talking about?
Friday.
Friday the 13th?
Yeah, Friday the 13th is probably not a good day. We'll do Thursday as well.
Sorry, my schedule's the one.
No.
How's the 12th?
I'm, other than 9 to 10, I'm free of it.
Michelle, anything on the 12th?
Anything on the 12th? Any,
Okay, any openings on the 12th?
Let me see here.
Early?
we could do, how about an evening?
I can, how about, oh, what just happened? All right, my sister just changed something on the 12th. What are you doing? What did you do? How about How about I can do noon-ish
On which day?
on the 12th, I Zoom.
I can do noon. Other people?
I might be a few minutes late.
Oh, you lost your, but I could.
What's that?
Well, they
Could you talk?
I don't want
Sorry, Michelle looked at just the wrong time and I made a face because. No, we've been trying to do a staff lunch. For the holiday.
I'll just bring lunch.
On staff.
Would lunchtime work, Michelle? on the
lunchtime
12th?
would work, or I could possibly do anytime between 12 and 2 o'clock, I can move something around.
Could we do
I
12:30?
can try to make that work, yeah, so count me in.
Could
Just
you-
tell me.
12:30, I will do.
12:30?
If it's 30 minutes, is it 30 minutes? I could be here for 30 minutes,
Okay,
by Zoom. At 12:30. After that, I'm-
all right, so 12:30 on Thursday.
I'm-
And bear me to revisit section 11 at some point, I'm not. Okay, all right, just,
12:30,
Because we gotta get.
On the 12th.
The over.
12:30 on,
yes,
Put it in now.
Okay,
Okay, we'll post that tomorrow morning.
yeah,
Are you able to be here in person?
depends on whether my other meetings end, but I'm in the town, I just don't know if I'll be able to transition quick enough.
I'll be here.
okay. Could be.
I'm gonna have to be on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're happy to have you in any way possible. All right. I think we're done. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.